We're ready to get started. Michelle, I don't know if she's here yet, but Michelle, if you're here, you also have the floor and the stage is yours. So take it away. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Michelle, chime in if you're here, but you may be, Michelle's out of power. She's been hit particularly hard with the weather. And her power went out again just before this started. But she and I have worked on both, or all this work together. So I'm prepared to walk through things too. I'm John Horvick with DHM Research, Senior Vice President there. For those who don't know us, we're an independent, nonpartisan public opinion and policy firm. I like to say it's our job to ask people what sort of communities they want to live in. And we've had an opportunity to do that here in Washington County. I'm going to walk through some recent numbers that we have. Going to begin by just kind of or setting the table a bit, just how are voters feeling about things and what are the issues that's on their minds. Some of this is going to be not a surprise, but it's good to maybe validate some a sense that we have out there and just put things in some historical context as well. One way to do that is to ask people that classic question: are things heading in the right direction, or are they off on the wrong track? And DHM has been asking this question, well, really since this founding in 1977, but our digital archives goes back to the late 1990s. And here what we've done is taken every single time we've asked this question in Oregon, which is approaching 300 times over the last couple of decades, and just created a chart here that shows the annual average. And you can see if you go back to 2001, at the time, 60% of Oregonians thought the state was heading in the right direction. So that was a time when you walked down the street, talked to your neighbor, go to the bar, go to your church, whatever it was, you talk to folks, most people feel pretty good about things. And then things have changed. They've gone up and down over time. And particularly when the economy is poor, people feel more negative. As things economy improves, positive. But we're really seeing since 2020 a marked and sharp decline in sentiment. And so it fell all the way down to 27% in 2022. Now, the good news, I suppose, is that we saw a little bit of a rebound in 2023, where across the surveys we asked this question, it was 33% of Oregonians. Now, that means most of the time, if you're walking down the street, going to a bar, talking to folks at church, that most people are feeling negative about things, although we seem to be off a little bit of that bottom. Now, if we also, not quite as many times, but I've been asking folks this question in Washington County too, and you can see a couple of things here. One is that the broad trend is not dissimilar. You sort of see the peaks and valleys in a local community as you do statewide. You also tend to see people feel more positive about their local community over time than they have felt about the state. Now, if you note, it fell all the way down to 21% in 2021. And like this at the state, we've seen a little bit of a rebound those last couple of years, where most recently 38% in those in Washington County thought that the area was headed in the right direction. That's about half of what it was at its highest points. So even though things and Michelle just arrived, things have improved, we're still at a time when people are feeling particularly negative about things. Now, when we ask folks why, or what are the issues that you're particularly concerned about, different ways to do this. This is some numbers from the Portland metro region from a survey we did in August of 2023. Now, this is asked open-ended. So this isn't us giving us a list of things for people to respond to. This is asking them, in your own words, tell us what are the most important issues or where the biggest problems are right now. And we see that big red dot in the middle, homelessness. And that's really been the issue the Oregonians have been focused on, say, the last 3, 4, 5 years. What we do see somewhat of a change is this increase in public safety and crime, 18%, and drugs, 12%. You add those up together, you get to 30%. That has seen a rise the last couple years. So there is some elevated concerns around that. Now, whenever you look at a result like this, it's important to pay attention to what's here and what's not there. And you all maybe would notice different things that are not there. A couple that stand out to me. One is that jobs in the economy is just 6%. That used to always sort of be at the top. And I don't think that people have become less concerned about jobs, but just when unemployment is what, 3.5%, something like that, that's going to diminish. The other, frankly, is education. Education has added as an issue. Again, if I think we ask people directly, is education important, matter, whatever, they're going to say yes. But relative to other things, it's just not getting the attention that it has in the past. Jobs in the economy and education used to always be the number 1 and 2 issues, and currently they're not. In a recent survey, we did ask Washington County residents and voters a whole bunch of different issues. One thing we did ask them was just to think about where they want to be and what are the issues perhaps that that they're concerned about. Well, we did find that 56% said, if they had the option, would they consider moving somewhere else? And a majority said, yeah. 56% said if they could afford to, did not have to live or work in Washington County, they'd consider leaving. And the reasons why, we asked open-ended, that's on the right here. Taxes, 27% said something about taxes. And then again, number 2 there, public safety crime. That's that issue that's really sort of up on the rise. And the third there is homelessness. Now, if you read the comments about homelessness, they're both concerns about homelessness and a lot of concerns about, we're concerned about the problems in Portland or the problems in Multnomah County coming to our area. So it is both about a reaction to Multnomah or Washington County, but it's also sort of looking over to their neighbor and seeing some of the problems that they have there and causing some worry. We wanted them to reflect on not just quality of life in Washington County, but because that sense that they might be thinking about Washington County relative to some other places in the region, particularly Multnomah County. And one thing that we did find out is that 76% said that the quality of life in Washington County is better than Multnomah County. That's going to matter as we think about a funding measure for preschool for all, because Multnomah County it's done that first, and people that would be where they would look towards it, and so it is relevant to the question at hand. So some low right direction numbers, but also feeling better about quality of life compared to their neighbor to the east. So now let's go to big picture. Some stuff about the economy here, the economic outlook. First, just let's put this into the big picture. These are numbers from Gallup. The scale here is normalized at 0. That's not what's really important here. What's important is if you look to the right, negative numbers essentially is a measure of negativity about the economy. You can see that it really is historically low. Also that it seemed to have bottomed out really bottom out. So mid 2023, early 2023, and it hasn't been rising drastically, but at least it is moving in that direction. But big picture, people are feeling pretty negative about the economy. Now that's national, just to give you some national perspective. If we focus here in Washington County specifically, we asked a question recently to Washington County voters just to rate, the economic conditions as, very good, good, poor, or very poor. Now these are Washington County voters talking about the Oregon's economy. So important context. These are about the Oregon economy, but this specifically is these numbers are Washington County voters. The 54%, a majority, said that economic conditions were poor. Now, economic ratings have really become as much a measure of partisanship as it is anything else. You do see things move over time, but you see these big, big differences between Democrats and Republicans, and oftentimes it'll flip when administrations in the White House flip. But right now, 35% of Democrats say that the economy in Oregon's poor, 70% of Republicans, and those non-affiliated third-party voters are looking more like Republicans than they are Democrats. Now that's how Washington County voters are rating the Oregon's economic conditions. We also asked them, well, are things getting better? Saying about the same, or are things getting worse? So on the left here are the most recent numbers from Washington County voters. So you just really home in on them. 48% said things are getting worse. 48% say that things are getting worse in the context of low unemployment, declining inflation, rising stock market. There are some other indicators to suggest that the economy is doing well, but how people report, how they're seeing things, and how they're projecting to the future, about half say that things are getting worse. On the right is the trend for Oregonians about Oregon. And just to give you it had been rising, and then we've seen just, some hopeful signs that right direction number a little bit better. 45% say that the economy is getting worse, but it's actually improved since August of 2023. So a bad number that's not quite as bad as it was a few months ago. Now, asking people about the economy will provide you some insight about the world. Another insight of the world is asking them about their personal financial situation, and things are different. So here, if you look at the numbers on the left, what is it? 64%? 64% said that their personal financial situation is very good or good. So a clear majority saying that they're doing okay, but also a clear majority saying that the state's economic conditions are poor. However, kind of that flashing yellow light is even in the context of most people feeling like their personal financial situation is okay, you still have 37% who say that things are getting worse, just 16% who say their personal financial situation is getting better. So more than 2 to 1 on that sort of ratio, more than 2 to 1 think that their situation's getting worse than it's getting better. Again, I think we can find lots of economic indicators that suggest the economy is doing okay or doing well and improving. But that's not how people necessarily are seeing things themselves. And that's going to influence how they decide to, say, vote on a ballot measure. They're going to look at their own pocketbooks, their own sort of sense of what their economic future is, and that's going to weigh on them as they're making choices. Now with taxes, how people feel about taxes it's not one thing. It can be lots of things, depends on who's being taxed and what it's going to pay for. And sort of the context at which the discussion is happening. So I'll give you some different data around this. So one thing is that Governor Kotek has been out front that there should be at least a 3-year freeze on new taxes and fees in the Portland metro area. So our Democratic governor has been beating the drum, making this claim. And we asked do you think Washington County, so this is a question that we asked to Washington County voters, do you think Washington County should adopt a 3-year freeze on new or increased taxes and fees? 75% said yes. 75% said yes. It's always important to pay attention to those strongly numbers. So 51%, so the strong support to that idea versus just 8% strong oppose. So framed this way, a freeze on new taxes, Washington County, 75% saying, yeah, that is something I can get behind. Now, it gets a little complicated when you ask people then to think, well, do you think that different groups perhaps are paying too little, the right amount, or too much in taxes? So the previous question didn't frame it around any particular group, so everybody could see themselves in it. But if we ask folks, now these are
No.
Oh, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry. I think someone's mute was off. If we ask people, different groups, you'll see that, high income individuals, 54%, think that high income individuals are paying too little. 53% say that large businesses are paying too little. Now, on the other end, you personally, 56% that say they're paying too much, and then 50% think that small businesses are paying too much. So there's this question of taxes, and then there's a question of who pays the taxes, and attitudes are going to shift when considered in different ways, and it's important to be clear-eyed about that. In this recent survey that we did, where we were able to talk to Washington County voters in particular, we asked open-ended, what does it mean to be high income? So the previous question, right, we said high income individuals, that's that top bar, and 54% said they're paying too much, or excuse me, too little. But then we wanted to know, what does that mean to you? So here people could give us a dollar amount in terms of annual income. And you can see that it really depends on where you are starting from. So if you look at households, those who had household incomes below $50,000, 58% said high income was $100K a year. Now contrast that to households that were making $150K plus, that's on the right column there. 73% said, yeah, it's not until you make $250. So it really did make a difference when people are thinking about what's high income is kind of relative to where you are, and that's important sort of to factor into. And then after that question open-ended, we tried to be more specific with them, and we told them or asked them this, the sort of text is in the left-hand bubble there. We said many recent ballot measures in the Portland metro regions have expanded public programs by taxing higher income individuals. At what income level do you think people should generally be expected to pay more for services you think are important? Didn't define the service. We said services that you think are important. And that's going to, of course, differ across the community. But on the right here, you see the results. So the bottom 30% said none, just like that's, I'm not willing to, you know, at any income level is 30%. And then if we add the top two there, 100K and 150K, you get to 25%. So kind of that, you know, 150K and below, you're at about 55%. And then the above 50K, you're at what, about 36%. That's $200,000 and $250,000. So we can see, you know, most people could put some number on it, but most of it is below 150K. So then we got more specific to ask specifically about preschool and an income tax on to pay for tuition-free preschool. So here the language was on the left. This is, of course, of Washington County voters. Looking ahead to the November 2024, some have proposed ballot measures that could reach the ballot in Washington County. For each, indicate if you would be more or likely to support or oppose the measure. So one of them we asked about was establishes tuition-free preschool program for higher income earners, for higher income tax. Excuse me, let me slow down. Establishes tuition-free preschool program, higher earners income tax funding. Should Washington County establish tuition-free universal preschool with 1.5% tax on income above that threshold? So this is language that would be very similar to the language that would actually be on a ballot measure, right? So the word count, the structure, this is the sort of thing that people would encounter when they get their ballots put in that frame, that way. So the data, the results, 44% said they would support that, 49% said that they would oppose that. And again, here, this is where you want to pay attention as much to the overall number as the strong support and oppose. So 25% strong support, so 1 out of 4, that's not nothing. But 34% strongly oppose. So 1 out of 3 strongly oppose. Now, it's not a hard and fast rule, but typically we think of ballot measures. We generally say kind of the rule of thumb is 60% support or more early on is necessary to feel confident that something can pass. Or another way to say it, if you're below 60% support, there's a strong likelihood that the measure will fail, particularly if there's organized opposition. It is just simply easier to convince somebody to vote no on an issue than it is to persuade someone to vote yes. And so if here we're starting at 44, 49, so quite weak position for an income tax at this level to fund preschool. We asked a couple other questions that tried to just understand sort of test the sensitivity that people might have to information that they might hear about a preschool for all tax or an income tax to fund tuition-free preschool. So here are two, and we asked if just they were concerning, very concerning, or made no difference to them. The top one here reads, in the 2 years since its creation, Multnomah County's Preschool for All program has spent $30 million taxpayer money, but only enrolled 507 new children. That equals almost $60,000 per student. This program costs too much and does far too little. 71% found that very concerning, another 15% somewhat concerning. And the second one, thousands of people and businesses have fled Multnomah County because of its high income taxes, including from its Preschool for All program. Washington County should not copy Multnomah County's failures. It will make people and small businesses not want to be here. So that's 61% very concerning, another 13% somewhat concerning. Now, everybody's going to sort of make their argument, their case, and present different information about these issues to voters. But these are two things that would likely be said by those who oppose a preschool for all measure. Whether folks find these fair or unfair, these are types of information that would likely be part of the community conversation. And the voters really responded to them. We can see that here. That is all, and I am going to stop. And also, I think Michelle has arrived, so I haven't given her a chance to say hello or to add to anything if I had to say, or even correct anything I've had to say. So, Michelle, if you want to jump in and say anything, you can now. Otherwise, I will turn it over to back to the team.
Yes, thank you for stepping in, John, and sorry all. I had another power outage at my house that made me unable to be here on time, but DHM is very thankful that you all invited us here to speak with you tonight.
So I'll stop sharing and turn it back over.
From here, I got you from here, John. And Michelle, welcome. Sorry about the circumstance. We're all kind of going through it this week in different ways, but we're glad you're here. So, John, thank you for the information. A ton of great insight into voter sentiments. We are running a little bit ahead of schedule, which is probably pretty good. It will likely allow for some more in-depth question and answer toward the end, I believe. But as we mentioned earlier, I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to follow up with, if that's okay for both Michelle and John.
Go for it.
You guys ready to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have three. The first one is, obviously you've done a lot of surveys in recent weeks and months. This data gives the impression that people are in a bad mood in Washington County, except maybe when they compare themselves to Multnomah County. Is this just everywhere? How does Washington County compare with the rest of the state in their mood, and what's affecting it?
It is everywhere. It is more intense in the Portland metro area than it is in other parts of the state. It's frankly more intense in Portland than it is in any other part in the Portland metro region. But we do see the sort of negativity, communities say like Salem is struggled as well. It'll be another sort of spot where they've had real difficulties. And we see nationally, right? There's just been a decline in sentiment nationally too. So, Oregon is not alone. Washington County is not alone. The reasons are really clear. People are really concerned about the homelessness. They're concerned about crime. They're concerned about cost of living. That's the constellation of issues that is driving down sentiment. There is some sort of sense as well that people aren't getting value for their services, and it's measured by their local government's inability to deliver on the services that they most care about. Getting people off the street, feeling safe in their communities, and having affordable places to live. Unless and until people see improvement and see that improvement sustained over time. That's the thing. It's going to be that we're going to likely that sharp drop we saw in 2021. We're not going to see a sharp increase even if things improve tomorrow, right? We're going to have to build back voter trust and confidence that things can be sustained over time. And it's going to be much slower digging out of this negativity than it was falling into it.
I would just add to that. Part of the reason it's going to take time to build trust is people have been concerned about homelessness as their top issue for years. And so there hasn't been a sense that there's been real progress made on that. And the real progress might be happening. It's just not necessarily visible in a way that the average person can see when they walk down the street.
Just maybe one thing to notice or to note, this is some of a Washington County, but particularly it's an Oregon thing, is Portland has just become such a center of attention conversation. And that the way our media markets work, that the perception of Portland's going to infect other parts of the state, other communities in the state. And that might be unfair to everybody, including Portland, but that's just the reality of how people are perceiving things right now.
Yeah, I can speak as a employer, attracting out of state candidates. Sometimes Portland is seen as something not palatable to folks to move to Oregon these days.